Hello, guys and people. We've got the awesome Mo Teague with us today, who's given us the honour of a small interview. So thanks for your time, Mo.
You're welcome.
We'll get started. Just give us a little bit on your background. Where did you start? Where are you at now? And where do you plan on being in the future?
Potted history started way back. If I say that I first graded under Inoida, I don't know if that name means much to anybody.
It means quite a lot to karate circles, mate.
Yeah, to karate people. That was way back in the late 70s. Joined the military at a young age, went through the military, trained, been very fortunate to train with a lot of really good people. Richard Bastillo, Eric Paulson, Rick Fay. I mean, the list just goes on and on. A lot of it on seminars.
Yeah.
Back in the day when seminars was the way forward before the internet. Got into the British Combat Association when that first started with Jeff Thompson and Peter Considine. And yeah, just kind of made things up as we went along. I think back in those days, we just kind of it was great, really. It was very raw and very authentic in terms of working things out. I think at the time, martial arts was being questioned in terms of its validity, in terms of self-defense, self-protection, and then the UFC came along, kind of paralleled at the same time, which was great. But
that was around the early 90s, wasn't it?
Early 90s,
UFC, yeah.
And yeah, so I had my military background going on at the same time. I've just had fun, man. Just for the last, I can't say how long, but and where I am right now, I'm in a good place right now. I've got a training group. I've got a really tactical research and development group, which we put together to kind of establish. I think we're trying to establish standards, which I don't think are there at the moment in terms of the self-protection industry, if we can call it that.
Okay.
Or at least a standard, at least what's acceptable. And I think that's really, I've just had a few conversations with people here today, and I think it really does come down to standards.
Is this in terms of like martial systems, or is this like training self-protection specialists, like the people that are out there doing the job? Or is this just, is it trying to get a standard across the board for anybody that's involved in that kind of training?
Not in terms of martial arts, no. I'm not. That's not really my realm anymore. Yeah. It's more about it's difficult to, do we call it defensive tactics? Do we call it self-defense, self-protection? Even the terminology can get lost.
It's quite a grey area, isn't it?
It's a grey area, but I'm looking at what I call the tactical professional, and that could be anybody from the military guys, the law enforcement, security, and also importantly the self-defense, self-protection instructors.
Yeah.
The people that are disseminating this information. And there's no one standard, and there's not even a minimum standard, let alone something to aspire to. And there's no regulating body. There's no real authority per se. I think there are people within the industry who are recognized, Jeff Thompson, Peter Considine, and other names that come up, but I think it just kind of needs pulling together a little bit. Whether I'm, like I say, I've got a good group. I've got some really good people with me, and that's where I am at the moment. So
that's your main thing going forward, then?
Yeah, that's the way I see things going forward. We're trying to produce a manual to support what we're trying to put out there. So that hopefully got good people working on that behind the scenes. I'm not a tech guy. I'm a dinosaur, and I rely on some really good people behind the scenes. I won't mention their names, but they know who they are, and I'm really grateful to them.
You're not the only one in that boat, mate. I think a lot of people, whether it's martial arts, self-protection, or any kind of realm of that sort, you tend to have people that are doing the activity and people that are better at capturing it.
Yeah, there's so many people that are doing different things, even here today, but I think there have to be universal truths that are kind of unquestionable, that people are going to go, if you're teaching, if somebody does a self-defense course, they're going to get 100 different things if they go to 100 different places, and it's confusing.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, as an instructor, we have a responsibility. It's a massive responsibility, and we have an obligation, I think, to people that normally we have a relationship with that. We're talking about people's welfare, their safety, their mental health, their life, ultimately. And I would just like to see not a governing body per se, but a recognised standard. That's what I really would like.
That'd be pretty cool, actually. So going back in time a little bit more, you mentioned your sort of military history and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about that. Who were you with? Where did you train? What kind of experience have you got in that sort of realm?
Military. What can I say about the military? Not much happened, mate. Really, to be honest with you, been around a little bit, and I think the military, like they say, I think 95% is just hanging around waiting for things to happen, and then you have that really condensed. And I think I can remember a couple of moments where it was like, especially in Iraq and places, like being on a movie set, and like you feel like so small. And I can remember just kind of questioning. It made me, because like a lot of times when we're growing up, with you're told this, you're told that, and you're brought up as a culture or in the military and whatever.
Yeah.
But it made me question things beyond the kind of the rhetoric that as I was brought up and then in the military, and I can remember a few moments when you see carnage on a scale that you just can't imagine. I mean, you can imagine what's going on in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
But when you see firsthand things that were once people, and you realise how fragile life is. Not the same for everybody, but it was for me. It kind of made me reevaluate a few things massively. So I mean, I think it was more about what the military. I mean, it taught me a lot of good lessons in terms of life skills, which I didn't have before I joined. Structured discipline, all that kind of stuff. But I think it gave me experiences that I really, if we're talking about war and killing people and seeing dead people and killing and carnage and just horrible things, there's no glory in war.
No.
There's absolutely lots.
Do you think that there's much in the way of parallels between the violence that you see on that scale and then the violence you see on a smaller scale, which you sort of self-defense groups and that are normally training people to deal with? Are there many parallels between those two battlefields, if you will?
Well, I think violence is violence, and it just depends on really it's just amplification of the scale.
Yeah.
I abhor violence. So I think I would hate to be defined by violence. I'm capable of violence, as everybody is, really. Where everybody has a capability, but not everybody has the capacity to be violent. I've had both. I can be both. I have the capability and the capacity to be violent, but in the right context. I'm not gratuitously violent. I hate violence. I abhor violence. I speak out against violence. My rule number one of self-defense, if we can call it that, is be nice. Just be nice. And if you're nice, then you're probably going to preclude a lot of things happening. If you're an arsehole, then obviously anybody can have a fight. So in that respect, violence is violence. I don't even like to see. Look, I'm not saying I have a side to me that I don't particularly like, and I work on it. That's kind of my work, is to be a better person.
That's a responsibility as a human, isn't it?
Well, violence is just a tool. It just depends on how you use it and at what scale. So, I mean, like I say, Ukraine, and other things happening around the world. We live in a violent world. We live in violent times, and so really, see, self-defense. You're training for something that statistically is not going to happen, but it could happen. It's not going to happen, but you've got to train for that one moment when maybe it might. So I think there's a lot of nonsense wrapped up in the self-defense. I think too many people are defined by it. I'm way much more than self-defense instructor or self-protection instructor or whatever. That's just a small facet of who I am.
That's quite an interesting point and take on it, actually. We're in a room surrounded by people that practice all these different things that stem from violence, but not a single person in here will say that they're defined by it. So That is quite a good point, actually. Thinking back to your more classical training, are there any moments sort of throughout the experiences that you've had that have really stuck out as like very light bulb moments where you've sort of turned a corner in your learning processes at all?
Good point. Good question. So many probably, because I think you kind of address as a light bulb comes on, and you might address that if it's an issue or whatever, and you put that light out, then another one comes on, and maybe two lights come on or three or whatever. I'm intrigued. I'm fascinated by the human element of people, and so in terms of light bulb moments or defining moments, not really. It's just always been such a steady progression. I haven't really taken any 90-degree or 180-degree turns, I don't think. I've always known the path I was on and where I was going. So it's not like I've been deflected. So no, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap things up a little bit then. If you had one piece of standout advice that you could give yourself 20 years ago, what would that be?
20 years ago, excuse me, 20 years ago, crikey. I think I've always, like I say, when I go back to the times in the military that made an impact on me, I kind of made a philosophical decision to live my life a certain way. So I never was really, I'm not a materialistic person. I don't need, I live my philosophy, which I think a lot of people don't. In other words, I'm comfortable in my own skin. I know who I am. I know what I'm prepared to do, and what I'm, where I want to go. So 20 years ago, I'm probably on the same path now. I'm not the same person, obviously, but I'm on the same path. So I'm quite happy with that. To give myself advice, probably not, because no, because I think I formed my philosophy in the military, and I went, that's the way I want to go. I'm not after materials. I'm not after materialistic things. I'm not after money. That's not to say, again, money's just a tool. So I'm not chasing anything. I'm not after anything per se. So 20 years ago, no,
That's quite a profound thing to think about.
I'm quite happy where I was 20 years ago. I'm quite happy with who I am now, and I know where I'm going, and I know what I'm doing, and I'm happy, and I'm blessed. People say I'm lucky. I live in a beautiful part of the world, beautiful family. I've got wonderful friends, and people say I'm lucky. I'm not lucky. I'm blessed. I'm blessed. So
Cool. Will we see you at Kaizen again?
well, do you know what? This is my first time. I was a little bit intimidated by the journey, because I live it took me about 4.5 hours, and I was kind of 4.5 hours. I don't know, but I've got to say, I was here 5 minutes, and I've met so many wonderful people, and people I haven't seen for a long time, and it's been a joy. I've got to say, it's been a joy. I haven't seen much of what's going on the mats, to be honest with you, because I've spent so much time talking to friends and people, new people, and I've had a blast. So I'll definitely be back if I'll be invited back. Yeah.
Superb. Well, Mo, thanks for your time again.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you again in future. Thank
No,
you
I
very
hope so.
much.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.